Republican Senator Ted Cruz said something so dishonest on the floor of the Senate. I want to take a look at this with you. It's in relation to gun violence, and what he's trying to do here is flip the script, is project very obviously and disingenuously, and say that it's the Democrats who really say they want to do something about gun violence, but don't actually. When in reality, we see time and time again, Republicans do just that. They say, yeah, we want to address gun violence. It's about only school security, when school security is a part of it, but also gun control. Or that's only, okay, we'll talk about mental health, but not gun control. It's all of the above, but if you are ignoring gun control, I know you to be dishonest, because that is one of the primary ways we can decrease gun violence. And so because that's the reality of the Republican Party, getting up saying thoughts and prayers and we want to do something, and then blocking the very things that would help to decrease gun violence, Ted Cruz is deciding, I'm just going to say that's what the Democrats are doing. Take a look.
Every time there's a mass murder, there's a pattern that plays out. Number one, there's an expression of grief, of love for the community. There are millions of us who lift the community up in prayer. Inevitably, that produces a response from the political left, where they scream in unison, thoughts and prayers aren't enough. I'll tell you, Mr. President, I believe in the power of prayer. And I will continue praying for communities that are hurting, whether from a natural disaster or a horrific crime or anything else. But I agree with the sentiment. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. That is exactly right. We need action. And what is so infuriating is every time there's a mass shooting, Democrats in this chamber stand up and they don't actually want to do something to stop the murderers. Instead, they want another gun control bill to disarm law-abiding citizens that won't actually stop the murders, that won't actually protect our kids.
Again, ignoring the reality that the United States is different than every other developed country in a number of ways, but in this category is different in two primary ways when it comes to the topic of guns. Number one, we have more guns than every other developed country, and in the same point, and they're less regulated. More guns, less regulated, point one. More gun violence, point two. That's what sets us apart when it comes to guns from other developed countries. He also ignores the fact that as a trend, you see that more strict gun laws in states within the United States yields lower gun violence as a general rule. Less strict gun laws yields higher gun violence as a general rule within the United States. And of the top 10 highest gun crime states, highest rate of gun violence, 9 out of 10 are red states. But all of that's just a coincidence to Ted Cruz. It's really what? It's the answer for that is actually because nothing. There is an answer, and it's because gun control does make a difference. It does impact the reality of gun violence. And as long as individuals like Ted Cruz stand against common sense legislation to address that very fact, and other areas too, school security, mental health, general investment in communities, so that the all-around environment is one where everyone is better off and is less likely to commit terrible actions, and gun control. It has to be all the above, and even more. And Senator Chris Murphy very nicely exposes the dishonesty of Ted Cruz in response to this.
The senator says that there's this pattern that plays out after these shootings in which Democrats make demands about taking people's guns away, but aren't serious about making our kids safer. Is that how it played out after the shooting in Uvalde? Is that what happened last summer? No, that's not what happened. What happened last summer after the shooting in the Senator state is that serious members of this body who are more interested in legislating than enacting political theater, sat down together and negotiated a bill to save children's lives. Did it solve all of the problems in this country? Did it guarantee every child's safety? No, it did not. But let's be clear. Senator Cruz never expressed one iota of interest in being part of those negotiations. Other Republican senators did. And while I understand he objects to the gun provisions in that bill, guess what? That bill also put $15 billion into school safety, into mental health, into hardening our schools, into community anti-gun violence programs. I can't speak about the other members of the group that authored that bill, but I never got a single phone call from Senator Cruz during the month of negotiations suggesting that we add the language he's talking about to that proposal. Last summer, there were serious legislators who come to this floor to enact legislation to set aside our differences and pass legislation that makes our kids safe, willing to make compromise. Senator Cruz didn't even sniff that room.
There it is. Ted Cruz can live in a fantasy world and make up lies about what's going on, but the facts tell a very different story. And when it came time, even when some Republicans got on board with some level of change, when it came to the bipartisan gun safety bill that was passed, Ted Cruz was nowhere to be found. So, but even that bill was just not even anywhere close to where we need to get. And as long as we have a bunch of Ted Cruzes who are in power and they continue to hold the ideology that they hold because of the NRA contributions or the broken ideology itself or a fear of the constituents believing it, we're going to continue to see so much devastation. There's not a question about how we decrease. Now, there's a question about how much it would decrease. There's a question about after enacting certain laws, what would be next if we still, as we would, had a prevailing problem, even if it was less significant. But there's not a question about how we decrease gun violence. It's a multifaceted approach, but one of the categories that is crucial is gun control. Whether it be universal background checks, raising the age to buy a firearm. I obviously think what someone like Ted Cruz would never get on board this. A full driver's license-like process should be in place for guns. Expanding, enhancing, implementing red flag laws, banning assault weapons, banning high-capacity magazines, and there are countless others. But we could be doing things, but instead we sit here, we talk about one mass shooting, the same cycle takes place, dishonest talking points are rolled out like what you saw there with Ted Cruz, and then we move on. And I guess it's just waiting for better politicians to get in power. That's it, I guess. But until then, how much devastation is going to be caused?